All right, welcome, Shingai, Georgian, Carl, half of Carl's brain, three halves of Carl's brain. We're in education. I think we can perhaps review some of Shingai's recent posts and then continue with where we were going last time. And I'll maybe have a remark on that then. But yeah, Shingai, how's it been going, or what have your recent posts been? Even though I read them, I'll ask. Oh wait, unmute first.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, so a few weeks ago, realized that I felt I was starting to maybe rush a bit with the principles. And so I was like, okay, like I don't want to rush these. I want to give them the attention they deserve. So I've taken a step back to write on some topics that are a bit more emotional, a bit more personal. Daniel, can you actually go back to the post from before this about systemism as ideology? No. Yeah, there we go. That one right there. Yeah, so this one actually like sparked some interesting discussion and responses. Lynn Rasmussen commented on it and loved it, and my friend Gareth also seemed to like it as well. So I did think it was interesting that as I sort of was like, I acknowledged that systems science is what is most interesting to me and what I think is most important. And I recognize that there is a very emotional and ideological component when it comes to making change in the world. And so I put out this question of like, what if I did place more of a focus on, thinking about spreading systemism as an ideology? And systemism is this term that was coined by a philosopher physicist, Mario Bunge, a couple of decades ago. And so that seemed to resonate with people. Lynn especially seemed to like that approach. So yeah, I guess I was like a little bit surprised. And so this past week, I followed up on that by exploring in a bit more practical terms what it might look like to spread an ideology. And there's this researcher, Nadia. Daniel, are you familiar with her work at all? She did great work on like the history of funding open source. She worked at GitHub. Yeah, she does like a lot of really good work in crypto and outside of crypto. And she has a concept called an idea machine. So she talks about things like effective altruism and public goods funding within the Ethereum space as these sort of decentralized movements that are able to accomplish goals in a similar way that things like the Rockefeller Foundation and the Carnegie Mellon Foundation and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. But these decentralized movements can do it in a fashion that is not dependent on a centralized organization. The group is coordinating around an ideology rather than like a single org. So in this piece, I explored what it would look like to try and build a decentralized movement focused on spreading systemism as an ideology. And it was kind of like a fun, interesting exploration. Yeah, and I guess a question I
Cool.
would put out would be when I start talking about ideology and the idea of spreading ideology, what does that bring up for both of you? Is it like, yeah, are there any dangers you can see with that approach? Does it seem like a little bit messy? And yeah, I would love any feedback or criticism, thoughts.
Well, boy, I never would have thought of it. but but honestly, I mean, it might very well leverage on a normal human um, attribute. I wouldn't call it an attribute, but a proclivity to be guided by the ideas that are generated via having beliefs in particular things. So, I mean, ideology and science are in a lot of ways looked at as being counter to one another. Um,
Absolutely.
on the other hand, we haven't really been all that successful getting the science out. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
An interesting idea.
thought that comes up for me is when I think about like the Santa Fe Institute and the complexity community and the success that they've had. Um, I do wonder if there is an aspect of it where there's this like belief that complexity explains everything and it is a strongly held belief, and they've been successful in like spreading that worldview. So is there a way in which there's like an ideological component to
Right.
the success that they've had in their work?
Yeah, scientists are not immune to having beliefs
Hmm.
and having conviction in what they believe, and arguing that they're right because they scientifically demonstrated. Then years later, they're proven wrong. So it's I had some time back. I had kind of thought about uh, some of this more as a religion of kinds. Or how would people accept a whole variety of things that if it was part of a religious, almost cult-like. I don't know.
Yeah.
What brought, oh, sorry.
No, George.
No, I was just curious what brought Shanghai to this vision.
Oh, yeah, that is a good question. I think for some reason that I don't exactly remember, I started just like Googling different concepts around systemism. I just like found myself curious, like, oh, like, has there been any work looking at an ideology around systems? I honestly can't remember why I went down that path, but I did. And then I found that there's the paper. Exactly. I found that paper, had to purchase a copy, but
I
reading
would have
it.
sent it to you. I would have sent it to you.
Oh, okay, next time I'll do that. But reading it, I thought it was a great and thought-provoking piece of work. And so I decided it was a path worth following. I do think, my background in the social sciences and psychology kind of, I tend to see the world through these lenses. I think a lot about political movements, social movements. And so maybe I'm just, yeah, predisposed to thinking in these terms.
Yeah, well, a lot of thoughts on this. The first is like George said, science can seen as sometimes counter to ideology. I, I mean, this is the the greatest lie never told. That scientists don't believe anything. It's a total depersonalization. It's totally fallacious. It's the basis of the kind of maybe it came to its peak like in the kind of new atheism early 2000, like I'm atheist because I'm rational was kind of the, at least in how I see it, the climax of that way of thinking. As if like you, by erasing beliefs, you would come to believe in the Western scientific approach. And flipping that and saying that science is an ideology is something that many scientists probably don't want to do psychologically. So then, okay, well, what would it really mean for the? I see two aspects. There's, I mean, an inference and an action aspect. How do we view the world and how do we act on the world? How do we view the world? Everything is a system. That's the shortest way to say it, but then how do you proceed from there? Well, that's where the principles come into play, and the approach and all of this. But that's the way of thinking about it, and it dovetails with the action recommendation, leverage points, and all of these kinds of topics. People would then still have you'd still have to get your ought from an is. So it wouldn't be an ideology like others per se, because the fact that, yeah, a situational analysis or awareness is never going to resolve which action to take by itself. But situational awareness plus preference or goal might resolve what to do in that moment. So people would have multiple ideologies. It'd be hard to have to be a monocrop systemist. But that would probably be fine. And people could come to the table with, like, let's make an ecological model, the most accurate ecological model of the water use in Santa Cruz. Public utilities, citizens, all these, companies, agriculture. They should all be able to work on a interoperable open source CAD active block inference model, because if they don't agree on that model, the conversation hasn't really started. They still may want to do different things with the allocation of water, but I believe that they could agree that the problem should be solved in a systematic fashion according to certain processes, like the process of structured dialogue, the interoperability of the models used. So, and then, like, to Lynn's comment, also Lynn sent her book draft out, so that was pretty cool to see.
Her comments on the other piece.
Okay. Thank you. They claim answers to problems usually complete, but then she says, this ism would be amazing. So how do we reconcile that? It's not an answer. If, so, the world's made of capital, capital's the answer. The world is made of this, and this is the answer. World is made of systems, and the process is the approach. But, should I turn left or turn right? Well, which street are you driving on? Where are you trying to go? How could you have a generalized answer? So in that way, it'd be like a meta ideology that wouldn't necessarily contradict other belief systems.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really useful way of thinking about it. I can see it as a meta ideology that might make it easier for people with differing political ideologies to find common ground. And I did say in the piece that if I imagine myself wearing this hat of, like, being a systemist, I wouldn't really want to be advocating strongly for specific solutions to problems. I would want to focus on presenting all the relevant facts in a systematic fashion to empower the decision makers.
I could see the idea of an ism providing a motivational force for people. In other words, they wouldn't have to believe in every aspect of systemness, but believe that everything is a system. And therefore, if you do seek answers, look for it in a systems way. So the belief part is more, it's relegated to the idea that everything is a system, and you know, somehow or another, if you understand the systemness of something, you will understand it, as opposed to believing in the answer will be found in cybernetics, or believing that the answer will be found in complexity or something like that. Does that make any sense? It's kind of funny. When I was doing as president, I would give the newsletter, would have a message from the president. And I always started out, "Dear Systemists," or something like that. And for me, it was kind of a joke. I was thinking, you guys really believe in systems. It was a bit of a joke, but now it's all of a sudden it's crystallizing.
This
Well, I
is
sure encourage you to continue down this path and look what you discover.
okay, absolutely. Yeah. Last week at the knowledge and engineering knowledge engineering meeting, someone shared this book with me, inspired by my post. This was written back in 1978, The Rise of Systems Theory and Ideological Analysis. And this author is actually somewhat critical of systems theory, so it should be an interesting read. But his opinion is that a lot of the work being done in systems theory and systems dynamics back then was more about elite social planners trying to justify their desired policies rather than actually doing any sort of like objective systems analysis. So in his opinion, it was an ideology back then.
Well, okay, of course, this is just total speculations and everything. A lot of times there's a fusion of the true systemism, let's just say, the meta ideology that doesn't suggest something, with for like so we should make it regenerative. Like, systems isn't regenerativity. Systems is a dual use belief. Somebody could want to hasten the extinction of species, and systemism would also function for them. So clarifying that it's a belief action integrated process, kind of in a John Dewey or active inference way, that beliefs are embodied and they're enacted, and then different agents have different preferences, and there's no contradiction with saying I'm a systemist and I support city development, or I'm a systemist and I do not support city development. Mm-hmm. Because it's not on that level of like, should people live in cities or not? But sometimes like people just, it's all floating around and there's no clarity inside or outside of the head. So then it's easy to just conflate thinking in systems with like things will get better. But then it gets really just tied up in people's like visions and imaginations of the world, and then away from systemness as the commonality. But will that so then I mean, to get to the point of the so what is the ecosystem, the system's ecosystem? Because the ideology may be as briefly stated as this: And then you, in the article, you went through a certain agenda setting.
Yeah, I think in my head, it's pretty easy to imagine that, people at in COSI, people at I think there's like a systems dynamics society, people at Binghamton University's system science graduate program, like master's and PhD students. And then within the ISSS, like there probably are a decent amount of people in this world who will resonate with this ideology. So how do you bring them together on common ground and help them coordinate to accomplish specific tasks? So I feel like kind of like the people that would resonate with this are out there. That seems pretty clear. But then the question of like, how do you get money and how do you help them coordinate around specific goals feels like the biggest challenge to me.
Well, one thought is about ideologies arising from the vulgarization of mysticism, personal mysticism. That's one pattern that we've seen many times. In contrast with the crystallization or the synthesis of a distributed secular effort. Like, so that's one difference. And then as it has been a research area, research and application, but it's a theory, it's a theory. We have a lot of the we have the archival network or federation kind of with the Systems Community Alliance and Rob. So that's kind of like that's the alliance. At least in terms of this, those are some organizations in the alliance. But the scene builders, and especially I guess as we all know, like the challenges associated with just getting younger people to be involved and for people to like kind of front load their systems learning and then live rather than be surprised by learning about it later in their life. That's a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. This makes me think about conversations I've had with both George and Lynn around like early childhood education and getting kids and younger people to learn about systems by being out in the world, choosing things that interest them, and that being like the lens through which they're introduced to system concepts. So rather than a textbook shoving material at them, like let people choose something that they like care about, let them study it, and let them learn about systems concepts through that. So yeah, how do you create like a fun, interactive experience where people are empowered to explore the things they care about through the lens of systems? It's a big challenge, but I think it would be great.
I just realized I wasn't subscribed, so I just subscribed. I don't know. I'm not thinking. So I've got to go back and read that. And
Well, the as it is an all-encompassing belief, any organization could choose to view their system or system of interest from this viewpoint. So then the question will probably arise. So whether it's social work and feeding people, or it's a fire station, then that's going to be like the kind of, so what? What do I have to do by being part of this ideology? And how is it going to benefit me?
Mm.
Is it going to change people's language, their thinking, their actions? But in terms of the pure system agenda, those tools would be highly general. I mean, it'd be like like Linux. And also funding is part of it, but like the resources are not just financial, also the attentional resources and the attentional capacity associated with learning systems the first time and sort of /relearning. Okay, nice.
Another thought that's coming up for me during this conversation is I can imagine pushback against this idea of like everything being a system, coming in the form of people being like, oh, what about thoughts? What about emotions? What about beliefs? Like some of these more abstract things. And this is something that you address directly in the book, George. And so that could be a good blog post, is to really flesh out this idea of why these abstract things can and should be viewed as systems.
You know, over the years, I've had quite a few people, students mostly, say, well, what about this? That's not a system. And we'd have to work through all the parts and relations of parts to demonstrate that, well, there's something systemic about it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it feels like what sort of brings people to this whole area is like the idea that we could think about different systems in an appropriately contextualized way and talk about the general and the specific aspects and not have to start at square zero, because like either if it's like a decision tree, do you want to consider the general and specific aspects of a situation? If you don't want to, okay, do your own thing. You do want to, okay, are you going to derive a synthesis of generalities and particulars, or are you going to work in the lineage that has been working on that topic? So it should be like the funnel should be completely explicit. Yet many people are exposed and they only take either, they just dip their toe in. Perhaps because it can feel intellectually daunting to synthesize particulars and generalities.
Mm-hmm.
Even though people do it all the time, so not saying it is, but people may feel like it is.
I do wonder if there's some sort of connection here to the work we're exploring around a formal systems language, a graphical tool for working with systems diagrams. Like, I think currently I'm thinking about it mostly for existing systems practitioners, but can we imagine a version of this tool that is just like really accessible and really fun like something like Figma or something. I don't know, where people are like excited to like play around with dragging and dropping systems modules to depict their systems of interest. Like, could that become something that like the average person is like excited to use, or is that a little too far fetched?
Yeah, make a game of it.
Yeah, yeah,
Some of those games my kids used to play,
yeah,
and probably still do, where you have to get so much of a resource, and you got to build buildings, and you got to do all
yeah.
this stuff to create a community. Um, and what they're doing is really creating a system, but it's in the language that they sort of already recognize.
Mm, absolutely. I loved those types of games as a kid.
So in the back end of that game is not just a physics model or something like that, but a systems model that's actually checking the feasibility of putting these things together, what checking boundary conditions and things of that nature.
Yeah, going with this games idea, what about like a mod or a layer or a ground up game, maybe, using code models and all this, of like unlocking the tech tree. So you have different, you have 12, let's say 12 principles, and then you have like, so you're like trying to build out this like well-rounded, functional, adaptive understanding of a system. So then you may undertake different actions to increase your depth on these different principles, understanding, the connections of something and the development of something. Um, Bringing those pieces of information back to the colony. And then the other thing it made me think of was like the Sim City third person, and then like we'll call it a first person system or instead of
Mm,
a violence oriented game, but something where you're in the first person perspective.
like Minecraft, maybe something like
Yeah, like
that.
Minecraft. Yeah. Systems for Minecraft, and then basically have like the first and the third person perspective swapping, and then like just reconcile like taking a 30,000 foot view on the city and being able to move things around with like the view on the ground that's a partial view, local looking out, systems view looking over in, being able to keep both eyes open and like see it both ways.
Yeah, that's really fun to think about, especially, I don't know how closely you've been following these developments, but generative AI tools that are being used to create virtual worlds and video games. There's a company called Skybox Labs. Are you familiar with them, Daniel?
No.
Okay, but yeah, there's just incredible work being done in terms of empowering people to quickly spin up 3D video game worlds using a prompt to an AI. Oh, sorry, it's Blockade Labs, actually. And their,
Blockade.
yeah, Blockade Labs, and their tool is called Skybox.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, okay.
that's the one. Just a few days ago, I think they were accepted into NVIDIA's incubator program to like develop their work. But you can, yeah, like type in a prompt and it'll generate a 3D interactive world that can be ported into video game development tools.
I mean, you could explore different geometries, hyperbolic, Euclidean. Now it'll integrate this somehow.
Um, yeah, so last time I used this tool, they did not have all of this, like the brush tools and all that. So I haven't explored that element. I just played with the version where you put in a prompt. But I think there should be a way to, oh, okay. Yeah, did that integrate
Wow.
it?
Looking into an eye. I mean, okay. Well, if you play around with it, that sounds cool.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, this is the education question. Oh, wow. No, but the education question. What do people need to know or hear or learn or do to be more systemist? And how is that related to um the current things that occupy people's attention?
Yeah, it's a really good question.
The systemist radicalization pipelines in legal pro-social ways. But it kind of has to be, and we all have our own journeys. Someone has to be prepared to spend some time or find themselves having spent some time doing what? Reading George's textbook?
Experiencing.
Yeah. But then and that people often come to that point, but then it's like experiencing plus what? Because
Well,
everyone's
after
already
they
20. Yeah.
after they've gotten experience and begin to generate questions in their own mind is why does this work this way and not some other way? And then go to something like the textbook that says, well, it's because this is a system, these things are connected, you pull on that string and stuff's going to happen. In other words, it's a guide to organizing your own experientially gained thoughts about real world, the real things in the world that you deal with. And yeah, that's it. But I think experience comes first, and experience that causes questions to arise, and then those questions, then you give somebody a framework by which they can explore answering those questions. I mean, for me, the whole thing, the core of the book wasn't just the theoretical front end, it's the analytical methodology that allows someone to take apart a system but not break it as you're doing so, to do it in a holistic fashion. I think that's the kind of thing that you need to learn as a result of saying, "Oh boy, I need tools to explore the world that I want to understand."
Where do you see curiosity fitting into the picture?
Good question. I think a person has to already be curious about things.
Yeah.
But by the same token, I think most people, certainly in their younger years, are. I mean, my God, the kids ask questions, the why question. Why? Why this? Why that? They're not asking what and how necessarily, but they want to know why these things are the way they are. And you steer them in the direction of, all right, it's this way because, and then explore the how kinds of questions. Again, it gets back to that thing I was saying before, Shanghai. Start them when they're young. Start them in an environment where they're exposed to these puzzles, not puzzles in the traditional sense. And that's kind of the way we try to teach math, and that has mixed results. But things that cause them to stop and say, why is that the way it is? What's going on? And then once you do that, that natural curiosity, as long as you don't kill it, I think the modern school system that we send our kids to now just destroys a curiosity. I experienced that when I was a kid. It just my favorite story about when I was in, I don't know, I think it was probably 6th grade or something like that. We were studying the stars and astronomy and the planets and all this kind of stuff. And I can't remember how I led into it, but somehow or another, I proclaimed to the class that our sun was a star. And I knew that because my dad had bought me a book, a guide book to the stars and the planets and whatnot to go with a telescope he bought me. Right? So I'd gone through that book and realized that our sun was a star. The teacher, bless her soul forever, proclaimed, the sun is not a star. The sun is the sun. And I ended up in the principal's office. And in those days, principals had these big flat, paddle boards that capital punishment was a real thing back then. So schools just beat curiosity and any motivational kinds of things that you have to drive for. You put kids in the right situation. We talked about Montessori being the antithesis of what these modern education systems are. And that curiosity will be with them for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, I wonder if curiosity researchers have asked people, like, do you want to be more curious? What do you think would make you more curious? Because if somebody does, what would make you want to be more curious? Because otherwise, I mean, again, with this kind of decision tree approach, if someone wants to be more curious, then they either do or don't know how to go about doing that. There may be certain things that do support that, like mindfulness and attention and things like that. Or just involvement in a system and wanting to fix it. Like, it isn't even just super speculative. Curiosity is how you come to know systems that are only partially or unknown before you investigate. And then people either do want to be more curious and don't know how, or they don't even know that that's an option for their belief system. And again, people do engage in epistemic actions every day. What time is the bus? Take an epistemic action. And this is, again, to Lynn's point about the answer. Have you ever wondered why bad things happen to good people? Have you ever wondered where pets go after they die? Have you ever wondered where the universe was before it was there? Or, all this other. Well, here's the answer. Versus, okay, well, here's principles of systemsness. And now we're going to engage together, but really you're going to have to do this on your own time. And then over the months and the years, you'll come to have a different understanding. and you'll have more questions, not fewer. Very different pitch and direction, because the questions are there to resolve. So it's almost like we need to suspend our desire to close the question and just leave the question as a concept. What is fire? Or like, why do cells age? But you have to just be like, well, why do cells age is like a potentially a permanent research program at the species level. It's not, the answer is not just telomeres, especially if you want to answer it in that level of generality across species and such. So it's like, but for many other things, we want to open the question and close it and just resolve the uncertainty. So finding this salient balance between the motivation of reducing uncertainty, like really you need to substitute the question, why do cells age, with like, how does cellular aging relate to the 12 principles? And then you can go deeper and deeper into the principles, and you're going to be continuing to reduce your uncertainty about how is cellular aging related to this property. But you're never going to pull out of that situation and have an answer to why cells age. Again, especially at that level of generality. So some type of question substitution framework. Maybe that's related to system 1 and system 2, but yeah, Shingai.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, thinking about this in terms of framing questions. One thing I have been wondering for the newsletter is, what is a topic that I could write about that is relevant in the world, that like a large majority of people would be curious about and would want to see the principles applied to. So whether it's AI or like the war in Ukraine or like whatever, like what topic or what topics could I pick that yeah, lots of people are curious about. It's something I've been thinking about, because I think it would be good to tie the principles directly to something that a lot of people care about.
Making money.
Oh, that's funny. I didn't even think about it.
I mean, in some way, people, in terms of the making money in systems, it's kind of like what systems consultants do.
Yeah.
I know systems, and I'm going to help you either. I mean, what are the two main areas of systems consultancy? I'm going to help you make money. I'm going to help you win the war. So those are the settings that people are potentially even playing up the scarcity of knowledge or their own unique views, because they're in a competitive consultancy environment, not like a synergetic educational environment like we want to be in.
Yeah.
You need to maintain the relationship and kind of downplay other people's understanding of systems, whereas like we want to lift up everyone's perspective on systems and their journey through it. So, but then how do you support people to really be scene builders, let's just say, instead of just actors expecting the scene to be built around them, or scene stealers taking the copper wire just because they can resell it somewhere else. where did we have the sys XML?
Yep.
Okay, I was just trying to remember where this was.
Yeah. And we
All
are
right.
running short on time, but I did have a quick update on
Yeah, go for it.
yeah, so yeah, so I finished reading chapter 5 of the textbook. Next up is chapters 6, 7, and 8. And then the goal will be to put summaries of the key points in the notes section of each of those chapters. And then that will be the basis for some sort of synthetic specification. And then I'm in the process of going back through the CAD tutorials. So I've set up my development environment, and I haven't done any programming for a couple of years. So I'm really just like focusing on the basics of variables and if loops and for loops, and yeah, working my way up to the actual CAD models. But it feels good and exciting to be working with a programming language again. I reached out to Jeff at Block Science,
Oh, great.
and he said he was going to reach out to Jamshid Shorish, who is
Yep, co-author with
yeah,
Zargum.
exactly, on this paper that I just posted, Generalized Dynamical Systems. I talked a bit about what we're working on, and he sounded very excited about trying to yeah, get us some support and collaboration. So yeah, slow and steady progress. Oh, also, I'm putting together a self-study curriculum for set theory and graph theory, because it will be important for me to get deeper into these topics as we're doing this work. And so I would love any suggestions or recommendations. I've got a, let's see, Notion document here, where I have some YouTube tutorials, some textbooks around, yeah, set theory, graph theory, category theory. I feel like it probably makes sense to not try and tackle category theory initially, is my intuition. I think set theory and graph theory will be plenty. But if you happen to know of any good, interesting educational resources on these topics for beginners, yeah, please send them my way.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, let's continue. This was good. I like revisiting the blogs, but then let's just kind of continue to develop this as XML and distill things out, add more tasks as we need to. Characterize the capacities of CAD RI while we work from the other side with what we need. And then identify whether CAD itself will provide all the functionality we need, or whether we'll use some accessory tools, or whether we can suggest certain things for their development. So I'm looking forward to it. I'll be certainly there to look over again my notes, reread the textbook chapters, review the specification, so on.
All right, sounds great. Thank you.
Anything else, George?
No, I'm good to go.
Okay.
I'll I will make one comment though.
Yeah.
Set theory is core, but it's also embedded in a larger area called discrete math.
Okay. Yeah.
And so you might also look for, and I've been away from it for a while now in terms of textbooks, or, you know, the last discrete math course I taught was maybe 15 years ago. So I'm not up to speed in terms of resources, but I just wanted you to bear in mind that there's more than just the set theory itself. So you can go to probability, you know, the route of probability using sets, and so on and so forth. So, and then there's a classical, can't think of his name now, but yeah, I think you'll do fine.
Okay.
Putting it together.
Absolutely. Thank you. I will do some digging into discrete mathematics. Yeah.
And category theory, but we can talk more about that soon.
Okay, sounds great.
All right. See you all.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Bye.